Okay, so breaking news. There's a lot to talk about with this video, but the first thing is, officially today now we have confirmation from the Polish developer Bloober. They are currently working with Konami. They will be jointly developing selected contents and exchanging know-how, and Konami says they're excited to work with Bloober Team and other highly regarded development partners to produce game from existing and new IPs. This ties in pretty closely with what Bloober Team has kind of been hinting at, that they are working with a legendary developer on a IP, and that seemingly is now officially Konami, and although it's not said here specifically, most likely it's Silent Hill. Hooray, we got it. So now the way it is that we know, according to reports, that Konami has now 2 Silent Hill projects in the works. The first seemingly from presumably Bloober Team now, and the other outsourced to a Japanese studio. We don't know that studio. Of course, this is all still reports and rumors, pretty well-founded ones, but still. This is interesting now, and it still creates some new questions almost for the whole Blue Box Hideo Kojima conspiracy, which I'll jump to in a bit. But with Bloober Team, it's interesting because reactions are kind of mixed. So Bloober Team is an interesting horror-specific studio. Number one, this Polish studio, I think it's very good that they're 100% pretty much focused around horror. I thought Layers of Fear was just fantastic. But from there, a lot of their other stuff didn't quite jive with me. Like, not failures, but not quite hits. I wasn't crazy about the Blair Witch Project and their approach to it. I also thought the Medium was like almost, but not quite. But I thought the Medium was really a good step in the right direction. And if you told me that the studio that made the Medium was making a new Silent Hill game, I'd say, okay, let's see how it goes. Observer, which they worked on, was also pretty good. So they're kind of like 50-50, which is maybe not like the 100% best, safest, excellent choice, but I think there's some potential there, especially if they continue to work with the same teams behind the music and the art direction and stuff. The one thing, though, is that for me, like for Silent Hill, as someone who enjoys those games, part of the appeal is that, like, specifically Japanese DNA. A lot of games have this, where it might be a game portraying an American town, an American character, but there's that Japanese fingerprint on it all in terms of just game design, vibe, and atmosphere that I think is part of what makes the series special. So, a different European studio working on it, I don't know. We're going to have to see how this goes. Also, it's Konami, and we still can't really totally trust them. What if they're making Bloober make a Silent Hill kart racer game? That's being way too cynical for my types of videos. I apologize, but we don't know yet. But this ties into a video that I was actually recording before, just about the whole Blue Box and Hideo Kojima conspiracy, and how you might think now with this news they might be off the hook. But maybe not, because that rabbit hole is still pretty deep and there's a lot of questions unanswered. I have some thoughts, and I'm glad I'm kind of talking about this now that the dust has settled after like the crazy headlines from the last couple of weeks or so. A lot of you guys have asked my opinion about it, and I don't try to usually go too deep into these things, but this one is interesting. I do love me some Hideo Kojima, and I am hopeful for a new game. So let's jump into this wild hole. Now, I want to talk about my feelings on it, because that's what you guys want. The actual full breakdown, a lot of people do it much better. I will link those in the description down below, but I'll try and keep you at least somewhat roughly informed as we go. So long story short, in April on the PlayStation blog, there was an announcement of a new first-person horror game called Abandoned by this new studio called Blue Box Studios. It was a whatever trailer. It seemed like maybe it would be cool. It seemed a little rough, but whatever. It's an indie game. We'll see. Then a lot of people immediately just assumed that it was some sort of plant, some sort of fake studio set up by Hideo Kojima for him to eventually reveal his next game, possibly a horror game, which doesn't come out of left field because Hideo Kojima has done this before. Google Moby Dick Games. There was a whole thing leading up to Metal Gear Solid 5, a fake studio, a whole rigmarole. That's a word, right? Rigmarole. The whole rigmarole. So in the last weeks or so, this Blue Box type of thing has really started to ramp up because there's been a lot of convenient coincidences and clues, and the internet, of course, ran wild with them in terms of the lead developer. His name kind of translates to Hideo in Turkish. There was at one point like a cheeky tweet from the studio hinting like an S and an L with their next game having those letters in it. That was kind of blatant and a little heavy-handed. I think maybe that was just a mistake by them, or this is just a whole big conspiracy. There's a lot of clues leading to, I mean, I'm looking at the list right now. The actual concept of a blue box, Jeff Keighley maybe being involved. The fact that what we've seen of these games so far is kind of an asset flip. The biggest thing, though, is the fact that this game is seemingly out of nowhere. Blue Box Studios has a very limited history with a failed Kickstarter game in the early 2010s that didn't get any traction at all. And then they kind of worked on, but now it's got a different studio on it or a new name attached to it. But they worked on this game called The Haunting Bloodwater Curse, and it's essentially barely even a game. It's very much an early access thing. So this leads a lot of people to, assume that this is kind of just a shadow or a shell studio that is being used as possibly a new viral marketing ARG or alternate reality game style stunt to promote the next reveal for a Hideo Kojima game or a Sony game, what have you. And there's a lot to unpack with it all, not even just talking about all of the clues, because it's such a weird situation. And I think conspiracy theories can be dangerous. This is obviously one for fun. I think the Blue Box Studios Reddit conspiracy page, they have right on top, like, hey, we're just doing this for fun, because conspiracies can be dangerous. I think many of us out there have seen conspiracies kind of affect people in our lives a little bit, make them go a little wacky from time to time. So, I try not to dive into this stuff too much. But with Hideo Kojima, I just can't help myself. And with the fact that, it's not just Hideo. We've had these types of ARG-type cryptic reveals and teases for games before, and there's a lot of stuff on the board for this one that is strange. Now, the lead of this studio, Hassan Kamraman, has come out with a video and said, hey, I'm real, please stop, this sucks, which I do respect. Also talking about the studios that they're contracting out to, and they are real studios. I think the interesting thing that comes from all this, though, is why or where? So there's been interviews. Bloomberg, Jason Schreier was able to interview this guy, and he usually asks some pretty good journalistic questions, but we didn't get too much info from it, other than that he is definitely a real person. He's posted on Unreal forums before, and he claims that Sony took interest in him after the failed Kickstarter from years back, which to me, I don't know, it sounds kind of like that's it. Like there's no more inquiry to that, especially because, so it's interesting with Sony, right? Because on the one hand, they do seem to be very choosy and very specific with who they want to work with. They don't want to work with somebody that's going to damage their brand, right? They're not going to work with somebody who just cobbles together a bunch of asset studios and flips some assets and stuff like that. But on the other hand, on the PSN store, there's plenty of shovelware. Life of Black Tiger has been a meme for years. So it's not totally out of the realm of possibility. This guy, Hassan, might be a genuine game developer who really wants to make something and has a cool idea for a game with some of the people he's working with. And I think that's where I start to kind of tread on eggshells a little bit, because if they are totally real, I don't want this to blow up in their face, but you can also argue, on the other token, the fact that they kind of played coy with a couple of things and they tried to do a couple of cryptic tweets and stuff and did the S and the L tweet, that was them kind of fucking around and finding out, so to speak. And they poked the internet bare to try and stoke some excitement for their project. And ultimately, maybe it got a little too wild and out of their hands. So the thing where we're left off right now and why the headlines have kind of subsided is the fact that last week there was supposed to be a sort of app launch on the Sony PSN store. Apparently, these abandoned developers were going to launch an app that was kind of like an interactive trailer experience for the new game. Sound familiar? Sound like PT a little bit? Yeah, maybe. Blue Box and the lead in particular do seem like horror fans, so that could be a coincidence or just something that they genuinely want to try and emulate. But then the lead developer, Hassan, did come out and say, hey, we're going to delay it. We're very tired. We're working very hard on it, and we have to push it. And it sounded like the day he announced it, like it sounded like they still had a lot of work to do, which is a little sus, as the kids say. But regardless, so now apparently we're going to get some sort of app or thing or reveal trailer type thing in August or by the end of the summer, which again goes back to the, wow, Sony's working with them enough to allow them to release a sort of experimental hype trailer app type of thing. That's cool, right? Or is that still just ongoing with this Hideo Kojima conspiracy? Sony hasn't done anything to acknowledge these rumors, which, gotta say, Sony doesn't always immediately come out and try to address everything. They're probably pretty hands-off for most things. Hideo Kojima also hasn't done anything. There's been some things with like Kojima Productions liking some of their tweets, but then undoing that. It's just on the endless list of coincidences and stuff. But still, there can be a lot of coincidences and there can be a lot of weird things. And the internet can go and run wild with those things sometimes. The internet can be really dangerous with this type of stuff. But from the other side of it, the business sense side of it, the development side of it, that's where I'm asking all the questions. The coincidences, whatever. Now I'm just more fascinated in seeing, what the hell is this? How did this very small team get to work with Sony? How did they convince them to do these things? Apparently, you know, they have funding through an NDA. They can't reveal who it is, but apparently they have funding and they're working with Sony. You know, how are they selling things? Crazier things have happened, of course. Studios have been able to get funding and create something out of pretty much nothing. But when you add all that with the other stuff, I don't know. That's why my brain is still buzzing, and that's why I kind of wanted to hash this out with you guys. Because the bottom line is, this is all supposed to be fun, right? When games do or movies or whatever in the past have done sort of ARG teases, it's supposed to be a fun little rabbit hole, little chase, right? The only thing that I am worried about is that now we have a look at the head of this Blue Box studio, and we know some of the other teams that are contracted out, you know, software and development type stuff that are contracted out that are also involved in this. They have tweeted out that they are working with the studio and it's a real studio. But now we're at that point, is that for this one, it's like either someone's going to get hurt, which would be Blue Box. This blows up in their face and people completely immediately lose interest in their game, or the conspiracy people and everybody who thinks there's something more going on end up being right and just kind of end up being a footnote in the history books. I'm not discounting all the detective work, but at the end of the day, it is just fun stuff. I mean, look at Halo 2. I Love Bees. Do you remember I Love Bees? Many people don't. Younger people certainly don't. But I Love Bees essentially was an ARG viral internet sleuthing thing that was set up by Bungie and led to Halo 2 excitement and reveals. It was a pretty fun, weird, strange, long saga. It is well documented, but you know, if you ask just your average Halo fan, they probably don't remember what that was. But the people that do remember it because it was fun and they had a good time finding out about their new game. So again, what I'm trying to reiterate here is that the only difference is that it could potentially not be that, and it could be a studio that, you know, poked the internet a little bit too much, messed around, or maybe even just tricked us all. Who knows? The optimist in me likes to just think that maybe they are onto something. Maybe Sony saw their pitch and they are in love with it and they have the coolest idea for a horror game and it's going to blow us all away. That being said, I don't know. That trailer, man, that trailer was rough. I know that trailer was not indicative of the final game, and they did come out and publicly say that. But even still, like, what? Ugh. You know who really wins? I hate to say it. You know who really wins? Kojima-san. That son of a bitch. He gets to laugh all the way to the bank, regardless. Even if this isn't his game, we're all just wrapped around his damn finger once again. Played like a damn fiddle. See, I found... So if you can't tell, I am leaning towards this being something, but I still just think it's weird either way. Even if it's not Hideo Kojima, it's still strange. And I think that's worth looking into and thinking about. But like I said, I'll link everything down in the comments if you want to like go down the rabbit hole. Don't harass any developers. We don't need to, you know, again, this is just like a fun internet sleuthing type of thing. But part of the reason why I am putting this out is because I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. I've spoken to a lot of you guys on Discord or Twitter or Instagram, but the YouTube community as a whole, what are you guys thinking? Everybody's a little different. Every platform tends to go in certain ways. Again, I do want to point out that I'm not touching on every single clue because we'll get caught up in so long. So if you comment saying like, but what about this, Jake? Like, I know it's hard to cover all of it. Even stuff with like the timeline stuff with like other deals Kojima is possibly working on doesn't line up with this. There's a lot. So I'm just saying, can't acknowledge it all. We can talk in the comments. So what are you guys thinking about this thing? Is Abandoned a real thing? Is it just kind of like a weird little project by some indie developers that don't know what they're doing and they're stumbling through it and they poke the bear? Or is it Hideo Kojima's mastermind new product? Or is it Hideo Kojima's new mastermind project? I don't know, but I want to hear from you. I definitely want to know what you're thinking. So let's hang out and talk. I got one other video coming this week, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Clicking the like button helps me, but subscribing and the notification bell is also a good idea so you don't miss my next video. I don't spam you though. I don't put out videos all the time, once or twice a week, so keep your eyes peeled. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me, yapping about this stuff. I'm Jake Baldino. You can subscribe because video games, pizza's on me.